Hey, in the last video we had a look at binding to custom properties in our custom events, and this allowed us to have data flow from our parent to our child. Now the problem is, if we want to have the opposite direction, having data flow from our child to our parent, we can't do this with property binding. This is because, well, where would we bind to? So I'm in my child here, and well, I'm binding to my child and my parent by adding property binding to the selector of my child, right? To the HTML element, so to say. But in my child component, I don't have my parent component in there. I have no possibility of binding to it here. So this makes sense because, as I said, property binding means that data flows into something. But in this case, it would rather be that data should flow out of the child to the parent. So one level up instead of down. Now, unfortunately, Angular 2 doesn't ship with in my component changed something. Now, please update this specific value event. Well, it would be pretty hard to have that specific event, right? But we can create one very easy ourselves. So let's edit our child component here a little bit. And let's say I want to have an input field 2 where I specify my, let's say, my hobbies. So I have my H4 heading here. My hobbies are. And then I want to be able to enter them here and reflect them in my app component, which is my parent component. Let's say in an extra paragraph, right below my child here maybe. So below this child section, I'll add a paragraph where I say my hobbies are, and then I will already add the string interpolation to the data binding to bind to the hobbies property, which I'm creating here. Hobbies, just an empty string. So by default, nothing is output here. And now back in my child component, I want to be able, to really reflect any updates in my parent component. Now, as I said, to do this, we will need a custom event. So let's create a property which will have the name of that event. And which will basically be that event. So I will just name this hobbies changed. And what should that be? Well, it should not be an empty string, that's just a temporary value, because I will need to import something from Angular 2 core, and this will be the event emitter. That's something built into Angular 2, which allows us to, well, what the name says, emit events. So to create and emit custom events. So what this hobbies changed will be, well, will be just a new event emitter. And event emitter is a generic type, so it will get a string. So we basically just enter the type of the value we're going to pass through that event. And we're going to pass our hobbies text, so we're going to pass a string. Now, generic types is also something TypeScript introduced here. We know it from other languages like Java or C#. And I'm not going to go into detail about this. Basically, it means this event emitter exists for all possible types we could have because we can emit any type or any value of any type we want. Now, the Angular 2 team didn't want and would not be able to create thousands of event emitter, one for strings, one for numbers, so they created a generic one which can handle all, and we're specifying what specifically we're passing here by specifying between those greater than and smaller than signs here. So this is our event emitter, and now in my hobbies input field here, I want to react to an event, so to the key up event, so that I kind of create my own two-way data binding, that when I change something there, I will emit the event which will change something in the parent component. So basically got this event chain set up then. So here I got my key up event, and I want to trigger or to execute the onHobbies changed method. which I will create here on hobbies changed. Now this should pass my hobbies text, and therefore I will give this input here a local variable just called, let's call it hobbies, and I will pass the value of that input to the method here. So now we're storing, or we're executing this function whenever we type something here. Well, obviously it doesn't do anything right now, but it is executed. We're passing the text we're entering here to our own hobbies changed. And now all I want to do here is take my hobbies changed property here, the event emitter, and execute a certain function or method of this event emitter, which is called emit. And as the name implies, all this does is, well, it emits an event. Now in the parentheses, we're passing the value we want to pass with this event. Now this could be an object, or this could be, like in this case, just be a string. So I'm passing the hobbies. And this is a string, that's why we define it as a string event emitter up here. If we were passing an object of type dog, we would have to, enter the dog type here. Okay, so now we're emitting this, and now in my app component, I need to catch this event. I need to be able to listen to it. We're doing this like we're always handling event binding, like we're doing it here by using our parentheses syntax. So in my property binding selector here, I'll add the parentheses here, and I will listen to what will I listen? I will listen to my hobbies changed event, because that's the name we got here. But I hope you're now a bit suspicious. How does Angular 2 know that this is actually something which should be an output of this component? Yeah, it is an event emitter, but maybe I want to use this event inside of this component and I don't want to expose it to other components. So the same as with inputs, we have to specify that we have certain outputs. It's the same syntax as the inputs configuration has. So outputs takes an array of strings where we define all the names of properties we're exposing as outputs, so as events, so to say. So here we're setting hobbies changed because that's the name of our event here. And now we can bind to hobbies changed in our parent component. So hobbies changed is the name of the event. And what do we want to do when we catch that event? All I want to do is, as I want to set hobbies, so that's the name of my property here, hobbies, equal to event. Now $event, that's important. You can't change this name. $event is the built-in name in Angular 2 for the default value which gets passed with an event. You don't have to use $event, like in my child component here. I'm not using $event anywhere here on my key up event, but I could. And it would return an object of type event, which would contain all types of information about this event. For example, the target of this event, which would be the input element, and a lot of more configuration. So I could use it, but I don't need it here, so I'm not catching it. But I could pass like event target.value, and this would still refer to this input element because event target is the target of the event, which is the input element, and then to the value. But I'm using hobbies here because, well, I like this local variable syntax and it's also shorter. Now, here I'm using $event to catch this string, this hobby string I'm passing here. I cannot use hobbies there. I can't write like hobbies because that would only use the hobbies I got here. And if I would not have hobbies here, well, it would not find anything. So that does not work. I have to use $event to get the value which gets passed with the event. Now, if that were an object, then I would have to just use dot notation to access a certain value of that object or a certain property, but it's just a plain string, so I can directly bind hobbies to the $sign event. Let me save this, and now let me enter testing stuff. And as you can see, it gets updated in my parent component when I enter it into the child component. And that is how custom events work in Angular 2 and how easy they are to set up. Really awesome in my opinion. And together with the property binding, event binding allows us to hook up all our components with each other, have them work together, let data flow from one component to another, up, down, in all directions, and control the flow of data in our application, and really take strong advantage of this component-based approach in Angular 2. So very important thing we learned here. And in the next video, I'll have a summary about all those data bindings we learned here. There'll be a quick one that's more that you have to code to have a look into if you're not sure. But thereafter, we will build a project where we will use all those forms of data, or a lot of those forms of data binding we learned here, to build something more amazing than just a puzzle we did in our last project. See you in the next videos. Bye.